Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at the Datamine from Ishida. The reason for this is because there's a bunch of changes in it, which obviously correlate to the changelogs, but also some future content that may be coming in. There's some profile pictures that they brought in, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But one of the first things that they've done is they have actually changed a bunch of stat card flags. Basically every flag that has a cross on it, Denmark, Finland, Norway and Sweden, so the Northern European boys, they've moved the cross. So I'm guessing it's a little bit more realistic. Instead of all the crosses just being in the center, they've moved them slightly over to make them more like the actual flags. I've always found it a little bit weird how a lot of those flags are set up in the game, so I'm glad that they've added that in. Hopefully, as we go forward, we can see more of those vehicles also in the game. There's so many really cool kind of Finnish vehicles they could add, Norwegian and Danish vehicles too, on top of the Swedish, so hopefully we can get some of that, and then also some more voice lines around the place. They also added a new air-to-ground Killcam. This might be part of the roadmap stuff that they were talking about, where they're going to improve the Killcam system and also the profile system. They might be testing some things, but they also did some Killcam changes in an earlier It's Fixed, basically talking about the position of where you see from the Killcam, which is kind of cool. They also changed a bunch of RWR parameters in SB. Basically, now there is a new designation set of limits on the RWRs. So for a tank, it's 10 kilometers. Same with the UAV. For a ship, it's 30 kilometers. For a helicopter, 30. And the plane is 50 kilometers. So overall, some pretty interesting ideas there. And also, what they've done is they've made it so all targets is true, and also specific IFF is true as well. So my guess is they're changing how targets are seen, instead of things just being there or not there. Now they're just adding distances in, so therefore you can detect stuff over time, which is kind of cool. They've also changed some plane spawn counts, or spawn points, cost calculations. This has been something I've been talking about for an incredibly long time. One of the problems with Gaijin in general is when it comes to balancing stuff, it takes a long time for them to do it. For example, today we just got the fact that they were going to decompress the AirBRs, when anybody and their mother could have told you this was going to be an issue pre-update, and they would have to change some stock loadouts and stuff like that. But it just takes a few weeks in order to kind of, well, just end up in a horrific position and then change it. Now we're getting some similar stuff in terms of guided bombs. It turns out, hey presto, guided bombs have been massively overperforming for the longest time. And since they've just fixed a bug with them, meaning that they won't be able to lose tracking now when you go to third person, it is going to be even more of a mess. So what they've done is they've changed some of the multipliers in terms of bringing them in. The 200 to 500 kilo or 499 kilo ones have decreased, but the 500 to 1999 kilo and 2000 plus kilo bombs have massively increased in SB multipliers required. And that was needed. That was needed many months ago. And I would say it still isn't enough, but at least it is something which is getting changed. They've also done it with missile SP multipliers too. So previously it was weight based, like rockets and bombs, but now it's going to be guidance type based. And the SACLOS IR and SARH is going to be 1.1 times, and the ARH is going to be 1.37 times. So hopefully now that we see some of these changes coming in when it comes to the spawn point calculations, hopefully now this will bring in a new world where we can finally start doing a bit more balancing in terms of SP costs in the different game modes, instead of what we have now, which is basically just letting certain vehicles rule the roost for an incredibly long time and having to wait months and months for BR changes to maybe change them and still then be pretty effective. They also fixed the data link stuff on TWSs. We obviously talked about that previously, something which was definitely a problem. And if you want to read more about it, they actually talked about it in the It's Fixed. The idea that it was dropping targets and then moving to other ones if the target was doing specific things, which of course was a bug. So therefore they fixed it. Now They've also increased tracking accuracy on them, so they're going to be even more powerful, specifically for the one RS2 Schlem. This is the one on some of the high-tier SPAs. I believe it's on the Panzer and also the Tor, but I might be wrong about that, just because I can't remember all of the specific names. Then you also have the 9K330. The tracking accuracy has been increased to that as well. And also, they've added some new avatars. These avatars are the Apex Predator and the Apex Valkyrie. Now, these look really cool, and I'm hoping that it leads to an event, because usually during this time we have some kind of event, whether it's a summer event or whether it's a additional event. You may remember the Atomic Heart stuff from last year, which happened around this time. It also might lead to some esports stuff. If you haven't been following the esports stuff, which I know a lot of you guys don't do when the Twitch drops are off, basically the viewership itself drops a ridiculous percentage. It's like 3% of the overall thing. But with Twitch drops, obviously they get a lot of views because people want free stuff. They've actually been doing the qualifying for a next tournament, and the next tournament is called the Armored Apex tournament. So they've been doing a bunch of open qualifiers for that. It's a bunch of top tier MBTs again, because that's what people want to watch, and they're trying to sell it as a product as much as they can. So basically what you're going to see now is probably a bunch of Twitch drops with Apex Predator, Apex Valkyrie, and then some camos once again. So yeah, basically the same as before. I hope that this is a different event and it's an in-game event instead of just putting on a stream in the background and getting prizes from it again. I would rather have, you know, something concrete in the game, maybe to do with another game like Turok, which would be quite fun, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is just for the esports stuff once again. They have also changed the daily login reward backgrounds. They've basically updated them to some of the new stuff that we see, some of the new vehicles, since they've been the same for a long time. They basically just take a lot of the wallpapers that you've seen out of the game and mesh them together in daily login reward backgrounds. They actually do look quite nice, so it's well worth having a look at and seeing, so definitely quite fun. And they're also changing some airspawn and bomber airspawn kind of levels in Air Conquest. A lot of them are actually increasing, surprisingly. I thought they would decrease, but no, a lot of them are increasing across the way. So therefore there'll be a lot more survivability for bombers, and also a little bit for stuff like attackers and things like that. They're doing it across the board in a bunch of Air Conquests, and also just standard maps as well. So yeah, it's kind of crazy how much they're changing. It's not changing by a lot though in some cases. Like for example, for 6793 for the Normandy map, Team 1 is now spawning at 594 meters instead of 500, and the Team 2 is spawning at 508 meters. So very small micro changes, which I don't think will make that much of a change. They've finally fixed the Tornadoes countermeasure pod, by the way. So instead of them just getting 56 large flares, they are now getting 56 large flares and also 680 large chaff onlys. So basically you can now bring along a metric ton of chaff, which is fantastic. They've also done the same thing for the AJ37 and the AJS. So now you can bring the 680 chaff alongside of the flares if you want to, which is fantastic. They added CCIP and CCRP for bombs, and also CCRP for rockets for the F-16A-15 for France. This was actually pointed out to me yesterday that this wasn't there, and that was kind of surprising, since of course that was the only F-16 without those things. Didn't know if that was supposed to be the case, obviously not. And they have fixed the F-16A M15, which was holding the AIM-120 on the wrong pylon, which is quite interesting. They've changed the MiG-29 SMT's countermeasures too, from 116 regular to 56 large and 60 regular. So that actually is quite a large buff. And also they have increased once again the amount of countermeasures that the Mirage F1 CT has. It now will have more countermeasures. It already had enough, but now it just has way more than it did before. The Nesha as well well. The drop tank was visible even when not equipped, so they've removed that, which is nice. The ZSU 23 4 and 4, which is the Shilka, didn't have access to reloading its missiles, which kind of sucks, because the reason it's had its BR is because of the missiles, but now you can. So that's really good. Also, the Tiger II early, the previous ammo was consumed from the storage in pairs after every 2 shots. Now it's single file. That was something that used to happen with the old Tiger IIs too. The Tiger II early, I believe, is the Kung's Tiger, the one which is in the Swedish tree. So yeah, looks like there was probably some old code that was going over from that. And also, the Queen Mary, the ammo rack for the 102mm cannon, was linked to the torpedo launcher, which is obviously not great. And the Shonen, it wasn't possible to consume all the ammo from the double 120 turret's ammo rack. And now they fixed that too, which is great. They've also changed some of the Japanese guns, the Type 5 APHE specifically, and also the HO-155. So if you're interested in that, make sure to check it out. They've also changed the Derby and the Ardata's missile characteristics, which obviously makes quite a large difference. There's also now some new avatar text, obviously the Apex Predator and Valkyrie that we talked about, and they added some crew menu text too to help out people, which is great. They also added the new hint text of help an ally get out of the shallows, which I'm guessing is them getting stuck in the water. And then also new HUD text outside the launch zone, and the target is outside the launch zone. Use the shooter's A2GM camera to aim, which is kind of fun. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on with that one, but it's quite nice. Also, they did some cockpit MFD changes to the F-15 and also the Harriers, so if you play simulator, it's definitely worth having a look at. And also, at the same time, a bunch of TU2s got their user skins enabled, which is really cool. The wing overload logic has also been reworked. This is a huge one, actually, and will be massive for a lot of teams. So basically, the wing overload logic was reworked. Planes can now be held longer at peak G. Wing rips are a lot less sudden. This is going to help a lot of vehicles, especially when it comes to stuff like the Crusaders, which obviously have real problems with just snapping themselves apart. So a lot of changes will come in for that, and I'm sure it will be how people play. So, new profile pictures coming in, new changes to balance on good old secondary armaments, and also a bunch more changes on top of it. It's definitely a busy time in War Thunder in terms of changes to the game. Hopefully, when the events start coming around and the new Battle Pass, it will relax a little bit. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.